Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. Let's get started with our hosts, Linda McKissick and Dana Gentry.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Everything Life and Real Estate. I'm Linda McKissick.
And I'm Dana Gentry.
Good morning, Dana. How was your Thanksgiving?
Good morning. It was good. I just told Adam yesterday, I feel like between birthday and Thanksgiving, I ate my way through like 6 straight days. I mean, I'm like yesterday I had green juice, a shake. I'm like trying to get back on track.
Yeah, I hear you. Same. Yeah.
Hey, I know we have a great guest, but really fast, I want you to just share about your Mimi and Pop camp because I know we've talked about that so many times and you had it.
Yes, actually we did have it. We went back and forth because some grandkids couldn't be there, but we finally decided if we don't do this, we're never going to do it. And it was awesome. It was really cool. Thank God for some of our Quantum Leap material because that's what we started with. And it was just a lot of fun and super glad we did it. Your t-shirts were a hit. So thank you very much. Appreciate that.
You're welcome. The pictures looked great.
Yeah. And we said no cell phones, no technology. So we wouldn't let them bring any of that stuff. And I think that made it even more special because they got to plug in and then we went and played and had fun. And it was just a great day. And I got that idea from Mo Anderson's friend from Cincinnati. Remember years ago that we had her come talk it was one of Mo's best friends from college. She mentioned it from stage and I wrote it down and said, I'm going to do that someday. I'm going to do the Mimi and Pop camp. So it's awesome. So yeah, Press and I think we need to write an ebook because we have had so many requests on how do you do that? What would that look like? So we'll have to put something together for everybody.
Cool. That's awesome. I'm so glad.
Awesome. Well, super excited about our guest today. So Marc King, if you would kind of give our audience a little bit of background about your journey in the real estate industry and what brought you to where we are today.
I think we've been trying to have Marc on for a year now. So I'm glad he's here.
Oh, yes. That's very kind. Well, you are my favorite people and I really appreciate the time. So short version is been in the industry for 20 years, started out as a real estate agent. Grew up a fairly big business, got to number one in my board back in the mid 2000s, and then had an opportunity to take over a brokerage and do lots of different things. So in the past 20 years, I've helped lead coaching organizations, been a real estate agent and brokerage coach, worked at the regional level, divisional level, and today I'm the director of growth over at Keller Williams. So super excited. And I like to tell people, if I'm good at anything, it's failing very quickly and making a lot of big mistakes, but never making the same mistake twice, hopefully, right?
I love it. And Marc, and I already have a question. So how do you think an agent knows whether, because Dana and I, especially Dana, is putting together a leadership academy for next year to really look for people who kind of have a calling about leadership. And how do you think the realtor knows between, I want to spend the next 30 years just selling houses, by the way, and that's leadership too, because to do that, you're probably going to put a team together, or they want to go a leadership route or some other opportunity route. How do you think a person knows that? Did you have a knowing? Did you just get presented with an opportunity? How'd that come about?
I think for me, and I think it's personal for everyone, Linda. I think for me, I worked with 3 buyers before I realized I'm not a buyer's agent. I literally would say, I've shown you 3 houses, now pick one. I don't have time for this. I've got, so I was a listing agent. I love the listing side. I like the math. I like the analytics. And what I found is I'm much more of a long-term relationship person. I'd much rather have a long, relationship with you as a client, as a friend, whatever. And I started teaching a lot around my community and my board, and I loved it. And I thought, you know what, I get way more out of teaching and sharing and helping others that I can build this long-term relationship with than what seemed to me like a 90-day relationship with my sellers. And I was just kind of churning and burning. And in 2008, I sold 245 houses and thought that was a lot at the time. Nothing like some of the top agents today, right? And I didn't get the same joy and satisfaction out of it. I made more money than I ever thought I would make growing up. And I thought, this is amazing. And it's just not as fulfilling as I think it could be. And I started working on leadership academies, had the opportunity to take over a brokerage. I bought a brokerage. And then I realized I didn't know anything about leadership. And I was very fortunate to be around a ton of great leaders. You were one of them. I came to all the classes I could get in front of you for at the time. And And so I just started learning and I started developing leadership. I studied everything John Maxwell ever wrote, became friends with a lot of his coaches and just kind of grew from there. But I think it was a huge challenge to go from being a top agent to a completely different role. And by the way, I took a very significant pay cut to do it. And I remember at the time, my wife at the time said, you know, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? And I said, you know, because it's just so much more fulfilling. I get so much more out of it. The challenge for me, Linda, was figuring out how to get back to that same income level and beyond, and how to build my wealth through the path of leadership. Because I know how to go sell another house. I know how to go get my sales up to 300 a year. I know how to do those things if that's the path I want to choose. Go down the leadership side, and it's much more difficult. So that would be, for me, it was very personal. But I knew in my heart of hearts, my 30-year goal is not to be sitting at the kitchen table with sellers. I'd much rather coach and teach and train and do all those things, a much larger, wider array of people.
Mm-hmm.
Got it. You said one of the things that you always do is you make big mistakes and you make them quickly and try not to make that one again. Did you figure that out as you tried more opportunities, that it was going to take bigger mistakes, or is that just kind of your MO on how you do anything?
I watched all the people around me that seemed to be getting ahead. They seemed to be doing the right things. They seemed to be building wealth. You know, when I started my wealth building journey, and I think I told your husband this story, I just bought anything that made sense on paper. I could do math. And so it could be a commercial building in Washington, D.C., or a tract of land in Texas, or, you know, all these properties that I owned at the time, and money was free, right? The banks just gave it to you. So if it made sense in math, I would just go buy it. And so what I learned about myself, though, is I got in and out of deals fast. I was not afraid to go after the deals, but I was not afraid to lose money on them either, which is a dangerous thing. Almost caused me to file bankruptcy in the mid 2000s, even though I was a top performing agent, because I just wasn't paying attention. So I think for me, learning where that line was, where I'm going to make mistakes, go fast, but not the mistake that's going to hopefully take us all down, right? And I think that's part of my MO. I think it's part of my impatience. It's part of my personality and all those things. I think the difference is, and I love to tell this quick story, I bought an investment property way before I ever got into real estate. And I bought it with 3 college friends, and we were going to go be the amazing HGTV house flippers and make all kinds of money, and right, because anybody can do it. And, you know, long story short, we paid a little bit too much for the property. It was a little bit in the wrong part of town. We paid a little bit too much to have it fixed up. We waited a little too long to sell it. We paid a little bit too much to sell it. We took a little bit too less to sell it. And at the end of the day, we all lost our $4,000 at the time, my only $4,000. So we lost $16,000 total in the property. Here's the difference. I own millions of dollars worth of real estate today. Those other 3 friends of mine have never bought an investment property again. So I looked at it like a $4,000 seminar, and they looked at it like no one can ever win at this. So that's my short investment.
Wow.
Mark, you said that's a good story. You said that when you began your wealth building journey, will you just talk a minute about, were you brought up really taught a lot about wealth, or was that something you figured out on your own? We can talk about that.
Yeah, I grew up very poor. You know, one of my favorite stories is that for a short time I lived in a car as a teenager with my family, and I got the back seat. And so the joke was I never had a nightlight unless I kicked the door open, right? So when you live in that environment, I grew up really poor. I went to 9 schools in 12 years, which I think you look at the bright side of that, it kind of helped personality. I've never met a stranger since then, right? No problem working with clients in real estate or real estate agents. However, the downside of that is my economic thermostat was extremely low. My parents never made more than $20,000 in a year. And so I told my high school counselor, if I can just keep my phone on, because that was the most embarrassing thing, is I would give my phone number to a girl and not know if she called or not because we didn't have a phone. And so, you know, those kind of things. So I grew up extremely poor, thinking either baseball, golf, or acting. That was the only 3 ways I was going to ever make any money, because that's what rich people do, right? So I went to college on a golf and baseball scholarship thinking this is my way out. When that didn't pan out, what I realized was there were actually people in business that were making as much as professional athletes. And there was actually a path for me to get out if I chose to study it and learn it and do all those things. So I knew nothing about it. So I started teaching. This is one of my favorite stories. I was dead broke and started teaching a class on wealth building. And I had to go look everything up at the local library at the time. It tells you how old I am. And I started teaching classes on how to build wealth. And I would say, look, I'm broke, I'm poor, I grew up really poor, and I don't know anything about wealth. So I'm doing this so I can learn along the way. And together we're going to go find out about this wealth thing. And if other people can figure it out, I'll figure it out. And I found people like Robert Kiyosaki and David Bach and, Dave Ramsey. And I've read hundreds and hundreds of wealth building books since then. And today I get to lead wealth building for our entire organization. So it's been a long journey with zero background. It wasn't self-taught though. I don't think anybody does it on their own. I had so many people around me that had such abundant mindsets. I remember sitting in a profit share class, Linda, that you taught a long time ago. And my mind was just blown that there was an activity I could do that would yield in passive income that I would get every single month, whether I did the activity anymore or not. And so I started working on that. And today that passive income is $4,000 or $5,000 a month. And that is life changing when you grow up the way that I did.
Yeah, I love it. Well, and I love that you didn't wait till you knew it all. You just started teaching and brought people along with you. I mean, so much in life, we wait till we're 100% already learn it all to think we have to teach it. And there's so much value in just bringing people along with you. Number one, it's accountability, because you got to go learn it if you're telling these people you're going to teach them and you don't know it yet. Instead of waiting for 100%, you didn't even wait till 80%. You went at about 30% probably.
Yeah, it was a challenge. I'll tell you, one of the things that really helped me is I taught Financial Peace University with Dave Ramsey. And you talk about accountability. When you stand in front of a room of people and cut up your credit cards, right? One of the blessings of growing up poor and having your father have the same name and file bankruptcy and do all those things is you can't get a credit card. And so I didn't, I bemoaned that issue for so long until I was 25 years old. I didn't have all the same credit card debt that all my friends had, thank goodness. But I stood up in front of that room and I cut up all my credit cards. I went home that night, went, oh my gosh, what did I do? I've ruined my finances, et cetera. And I haven't had a credit card since. So the accountability that comes with either a peer-to-peer accountability group, and I'll tell you, it's the most humbling thing in the world to walk in and say, I don't know anything about this. I want to learn about this. If you're passionate about this, if you'll help me, I'll help you. Let's go learn this together. If other people figured it out, we can figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love it. So did you have a number in mind for your wealth building? What was your plan around that?
Well, the magic number was always $1 million. If I can get to $1 million net worth, I'll get that, Rolls Royce. I'll get the big lake house. I'll get all the things that I've ever wanted. Because who has $1 million, right? I just need $1 million. And of course, as you grow up and you learn more, you realize that's probably not the number. And so your economic thermostat grows and grows and grows. And I've had to trick myself, because I'm a firm believer in the economic thermostat. And because of the way I grew up, my first job out of college, my first real job, I made $60,000 a year. And I went crazy. I bought a new car and I built a house and I did all the things to literally, I would spend every dollar I made and then have to figure out what I could do on the side to go, be able to pay my actual bills. So I had to learn the hard way. Again, I made bad decisions and I made them quick and I learned from them. And, I got into a lot of debt. I got into about $6 million worth of debt at one point. It's a whole nother story for a different time, unless you want to probe on that. It's painful, just so you know, and had to work my way out of it. I grew up in a very, on one side of the family, a very religious Southern Baptist environment, and you didn't take money from anybody and you didn't file bankruptcy, and that, it was just a source of pride and all those things. So I like to tell people today, because of my grandfather, who is the greatest man I've ever known, I took the hard path. I didn't file bankruptcy. I worked my way out of it. I paid off millions of dollars of bad debt. And so again, my mistakes have lots of zeros behind them. But the benefit of that is the lessons you learn from that are invaluable.
Mm-hmm. I also think, Mark, because I grew up very poor also, I think one benefit of that is you're not so worried about the bottom. You know what I mean? You've been there before. You knew how to come out of it. I find sometimes people are not willing to take advantage of an opportunity because they're trying to protect what they currently have. And they're so afraid that they will either look bad or fail or do whatever. And I think sometimes when you come from the very bottom, you don't worry about that as much. It's like, I've been to the bottom and I've been back up to the top. So if I go to the bottom, I'll just go back to the top again. Does that make sense?
There's so many studies that show us that, and I love to bring logic into this conversation, because the thing about personal finance is it's always more personal than it is finance. And I don't remember who I first heard that from, but it's about your behavior. And the good news about taking a lot of chances, if you will, and about experiencing a lot of good fortune and misfortune, et cetera, is you learn over time, you gain wisdom. So I promise you, when I say you could take away everything I've accumulated in my life, and I promise you in a couple of years, I'd be right back where I was. And we have study after study that shows that that's what actually happens to people that it happens to, right? I have zero fear of that. It would be painful. I don't want to give up the amazing house I live in and all those things, but I also don't care about those things. One of the benefits of growing up the way I did is, and Rebecca, this will be a fun comment. So my director of operations is on here to keep me honest, right? But I don't want to start over again. I don't think anybody does. But I'm one of the least materialistic people that I know. I have nice things, but I don't have nice things because I care about what people think about those nice things. I enjoy those nice things, right? And so you can take it all away, and I promise you, with what I've learned, I promise you we would be fine in a couple of years.
I love it. Well, speaking of Rebecca, one of the things we all admire about you is how well you've attracted great talent. Mm-hmm. And one of the things we're constantly trying to teach people on this podcast is how to use leverage better, and the benefits and the joy of if they can understand, master leverage. So talk to us a little bit about that journey.
Well, I will tell you, I've hired hundreds of people at this point in my career, and there's a process that we follow. And the deeper you follow the process on the front end, the more benefit you find on the back end. And that was, for someone with my personality who likes to move fast, that was always a challenge for me. I will tell you that I met Rebecca at a Starbucks as a referral from another business partner. And I knew she was talented, and I knew she was smart and all those things. I had no idea how it would change my life to get into business with her. And we went through a 7-step process. We literally met 7 times before I hired her. I hired her for $30,000 a year. And I said at the time, this is a joke of an offer, but I promise if we get into business together, we're gonna do great things. We're gonna have more fun than we've ever had. We're gonna make more money than we've ever made. And we're gonna do a lot of great things. And she bought into that vision, thank goodness. And she's turned out to be an amazing business partner. We have several businesses together today. She runs all of my businesses. And we've got a bunch of things in the works. And I would tell you, there's talent out there. The last thing, and Rebecca, I'd love for you to speak on this. The last thing I would tell you is when you have talent in your organization, you have to spend an inordinate amount of time empowering them, making them believe they can be great. And I was never great at that. I was someone who leveled growing up. That's what you did in the neighborhoods I grew up in. You psychologically leveled, and it was about, oh, you're great. Well, look at what I can do. And I've never had any ego around the people I've worked with. And so I want to empower them, lift them up constantly. And together we're going to go create massive results. I think the last thing on this is find people's genius, put them in a position they win, and then keep pouring on in their genius. Rebecca, what do you think?
Yeah, I would love for Rebecca to talk on that too, if she can unmute. There you go. Yeah. And also, Rebecca, you should share how being in Marc's world has helped you with wealth building also.
Well, so I grew up standard middle class family. My dad had a W-2 job, contributed to a 401k. Debt was bad except houses and cars. You could have as much debt for houses and cars as long as you could afford them. Go on down the road, American dream. And so then when I went to work, I was like, okay, W-2 job, 401k, my husband's the same way. And I'm not awesome at W-2 jobs. I'm a lot of work. Marc has put a lot of work into me. There's a lot of time you have to spend with me and pour into me. I found real estate, loved flexibility. Didn't know anything about this whole other Keller Williams world. I read the MREA, but I don't think I got it. I think I was bored in the first few chapters because I didn't get it. I wasn't really understanding it. I didn't see the bigger picture. Came to Keller Williams off a Craigslist ad at a really desperate time in my life. My husband lost his job. I didn't know what else to do. And I was probably only worth $30,000 a year at that moment. I was really scared that I couldn't feed my kids, keep a roof over our head. and answered a Craigslist ad because a friend of mine worked in that office. I think I thought she was the team leader still. I knew team leader because the agent I used to work for had been recruited and had said no at the time. So met Marc, and many years later understand things and talk about things I never thought was for me. I didn't know passive income was for regular people. I thought that was something some other person did. So it's really changed my economic thermostat. Marc, I think, works on that hourly to stretch it and think differently. And my whole viewpoint of what wealth could mean for anybody. I'm not on the sales side. I'm not the three of you guys. I'm administrative minded, operational minded, and spent many years struggling with the fact that my dad would say, "Did you go to college to be someone's assistant?" And I was like, I'm really good at it. And it was hard for a long time till I met Marc, and Marc was like, "Oh, you're an operations person. That's not a bad thing. Here, you can do all these things." And I was like, "Oh, that's like a whole other world was opened." So it's been a crazy 4 years for me.
Can I just brag on you for a second? So 4 years ago, you were at a fair, you mentioned a low point financially. And today, one of the things that we're most proud about together, because we have a passion in life, and I can tell a story about that later, but today Rebecca is a millionaire after 4 years. And it's because of her willingness to be open to coaching, training, teaching, business opportunities. There are many times where I would say, "Hey, you're going to be my partner in this business and you don't have a choice." And I would say it jokingly and lovingly and that sort of thing. And she'd say, "I don't know about that." And today she is an owner of several businesses. And that passive income, by the way, is $120,000 a year from those businesses alone, right? But before her actual job, right? Which has grown and tremendously, et cetera. So it's not just the income and the passive income, it's the net worth that she's been able to accumulate. It's the debt she's gotten out of. It's the, it's all the other opportunities, and the businesses have grown in value and that sort of thing too. So
that's awesome. That's a great story. Marc, I really want you to touch on the mindset of wealth building and what tips, how would you encourage somebody? Because it all starts with the mindset around being able to, just like Rebecca said, she thought passive income was for other people, not for her. And I think that a lot of people feel that way. So what would you say about mindset for somebody?
I love that, because we have this saying around here called be open to everything and question everything. And that comes from the background, again, growing up, being skeptical, having to look both ways, right? We're very open to any concept, but we're also going to question everything. We want to understand it. We want to come from an educational background, not a salesy background. Like let's dive in and figure out and argue about why this might be the best way to think about money. And because of the people I've been around the last 20 years, I'm constantly stretched and challenged to think differently. And one of the things that we love to do is just kind of play the what if game, right? And we do this on a weekly basis. We'll say, if failure wasn't an option, what would you do? What would you be? Rebecca would be an MMA fighter, for example. I would be in the next Transformers movie. Like, if failure was not an option, we would do different things, right? But this all goes back to your economic thermostat. That is your mindset around money. And if your economic thermostat is $60,000 a year and you make more than that, you're going to blow it on things that you normally wouldn't blow it on, right? If you make less than that, you're going to find yourself getting up a little earlier, putting a little more effort in and getting that income stabilized. So one of the things you have to do is constantly challenge yourself and your mindset and ask yourself, what is my economic thermostat? And there's a lot of ways you can trick yourself into that. I have a lot of things that come out of my bank account every month before I see them, because again, I'm still a spender. I still like nice things. And if left to my own devices, I would have a bunch of boats and lake houses and all kinds of different things that maybe I don't exactly need or aren't the smartest financial investment at the time. So that, plus having a board of directors to check in on. I have a very dear friend and been my coach for a long time. Business partner. His name's Tony. You know him. And he's on my board of directors. And so I have to check off with him on any big purchase or any big investment. We've actually invested in things together. But having people around you that you can just check in with. And by the way, my board of directors is alive and not alive. I have Napoleon Hill's on my board of directors, right? I check in with their level of thinking because I read Think and Grow Rich quarterly. I have Dave Ramsey's on my board of directors, so I don't use debt because he wouldn't think that's a good idea. You know, I've never met him or talked to him, but that's how I think. I've got to have an accountability group around me to affect my own mindset. Here's the ultimate biggest challenge, and this has been my mission statement since I was forced to write this by my coach. And my mission statement is to challenge the limited mindset of a predetermined destiny. And it sounds a little airy-fairy, and I get it, and we can have some fun with it, but to challenge the limited mindset of a predetermined destiny, to me, what that means is everyone I grew up around, everyone in my family believed a lot of things about money that aren't true. And it took me challenging that limited mindset to break out of that, right? There is no predetermined destiny. The first time I heard Gary Keller speak, he made the comment, no matter where you are in life, you're 3 years away from being financially independent. And I said, this person is crazy. He didn't know me. He didn't know where I came from. I can't do that. Maybe Linda McKissick can do that. I can't do that. And turns out he was right. Turns out that everyone listening to this right now is 3 years away from being financially independent. There are paths we have to follow. There's best practices. There's all those things. But this idea that it's for someone else, and I see this all the time, right? You go to the comment section of any YouTube video on any product, and you'll see things like, I could never afford this. However, this is really cool. Or, you must be a gazillionaire to be able to afford that new car, whatever it is. And the reality is that's a stuck, limited mindset that will keep you where you are. So you have to constantly work on that and challenge that. Books, reading, there is a overabundance of information. I will tell you, be really careful who you listen to. There's so many internet gurus today around wealth building, including me. And so I always tell people, because we have a whole wealth building community now, and I tell people, don't take my advice and just blindly go learn. Make sure that you check off, ask other people, get a different viewpoint. Don't blindly follow the YouTube guy who says you can trade watches and make $1 million a year if that's not what you want to do. Now, I'm sure there are people out there that trade watches for $1 million a year, but there's going to be systems and models and leverage and people and experience and failure and all that stuff built into that story. And you got to be willing to go through that to truly break out of that mindset.
Mm-hmm. Would you be able to share 2 or 3 tips that you feel like a listener who maybe they've already got their feet wet with building wealth? What would be two or three of the best tips you would give them?
I'm going to give you the most boring and then the most exciting. So the most boring is you have to follow a spending plan. We don't use the word budget anymore. It has a negative connotation, but you have to get yourself in order. Remember, this is 100% behavior. It doesn't matter how much you make. I promise you, and study after study shows, this is one of the things I love to do in front of a group of people. I'll say, I'll show them a study that shows the more income you make, the more debt you take on. So the further in debt you go, the more income you make, the further in debt you go. And I'll say, how many of you would like to make more money? And everyone will raise their hand. I'll go, now here's a study. The more income you make, the further in debt you go. Now, how many of you would like to make more money? And they all raise their hand. And I'll say, you don't get it. Until you control you and the person in the mirror, everything else is not going to matter to you. So number one is you've got to follow some kind of spending plan. You have to give yourself some parameters. And it's a really boring one. It's not super exciting, all those things. But I'll tell you what changed my life as a real estate agent specifically is setting up a banking account system. And I don't even remember where I learned this from. So it's hard. I'd love to give credit to whoever gave me this or the version of this. But I set up 4 different bank accounts as a real estate agent. When I'm coaching real estate agents to build wealth, we'll set up 4 different bank accounts, right? We know the number one reason that people get out of real estate who are successful is income taxes, right? The mindset of going from a W-2 job where your income, your check is your net money to now your check is top line is a challenge for a lot of people. And that's where most people come from. So setting up 4 different bank accounts, one's going to go to tax, one's going to go to your expenses as a business person, one's going to go to your savings fund or investment fund or whatever the case is, and then one's going to go to you to pay your bills. And understanding the different percentages and understanding when I sell a house and I make a $10,000 commission, I don't make $10,000. In fact, I'm probably going to bring home about $3,000 of that based on my tax bracket, based on how much money I have going out of every commission check towards investing, based on all those things. So getting in the mindset, again, tricking myself to know, we can do the math on 3% of anything as realtors. So instead of looking at it that way, I look at it and say, what's a third of the commission? That's what I get to take home and spend and live on, et cetera. The rest is going to make sure I don't get in trouble with taxes and make sure I'm constantly investing. The third little tip is you have to understand the eighth wonder of the world, right? Compound interest. And we all think we understand it. If you could do anything for your children, it would be to get them to just put a percentage of every dollar that ever comes into their life, put it away at a very young age. No matter, get them in the habit, again, the behavior. It could be 5%, it doesn't matter. When you see the math on this, and we've taught lots of classes, shown lots of studies, and I'll get the numbers wrong, but something like $100 a month for an 18-year-old is millions of dollars by the time they retire. It's $100 a month. My 16-year-old wastes more than $100 a month right now. I promise you, if they're thinking about it. So that would be kind of the boring tips. It's about spending plans and set up your bank accounts and invest and dollar cost average and all those things. The more exciting opportunities as a real estate agent specifically, here's what I would tell you. Stop looking at potential sales as 3% commissions and start looking at them. The first question I want you to ask is this a property I would like to own? When you go on any listing appointment or you show any buyer, first question ask yourself, would I like to own this home? Now, because of the inventory right now, the inventory shortage we're in and the pricing going up so high, I'm not buying a lot of real estate right now. But there's going to come a time in the next 12, 18 months. This is another huge tip. You've got to make your money in the good times and you have to save it. Because when the downturn comes, when I went $6 million in debt through the mid 2000s and had all kinds of properties everywhere, and I looked like a real estate magnate on paper, when the market turned down, not only did all my value go down, but I had no cash and couldn't get any to buy properties. I had sold properties that were now selling for 50% of what I sold them for, and I couldn't buy them. Mm-hmm. And that was a huge challenge. So on this side of it, if you're a real estate agent and you're starting from zero, I'll tell you what I did. I started working with investors. I got really good at finding tight criteria properties, meaning a very specific geographic location, number of bedrooms, number of bathrooms, et cetera. And I found those properties for other people to invest in. And I learned on their mistakes. I learned on what they bought well, what they didn't buy well. I watched what they did. I watched them put money into it, take money out of it. I watched them flip houses versus holding them, and all those things. So the last thing I would say, and I gave you a long answer to your short question, I apologize. But the last thing I would say is time goes faster the older you get. And you hear the older generations tell you this, and you don't believe it until you get older. But the reason I tell you that is I had so many properties that I bought in the mid 2000s that were really not good choices, right? They were not good financial decisions that today I've sold off a couple of those properties this last year, or I've held a couple of those properties through all the hard times, the new roofs and the HVAC systems. And today those properties have made me millions of dollars because of the renters paying those off over time, et cetera. And so understand that 15 years goes by like that as you get older. So hold on to your properties. I think there's a book about this somewhere, Linda.
There's a great book about it.
There's a great book about it, but I don't see it in your bookshelf back there behind you yet.
Give it away. I gave it away.
I'm going to have to send you one. I love this. I mean, there's so many nuggets, Mark, that you've just thrown out. I don't even think, I mean, there's just so many great nuggets here that
we could talk about this for hours. We could have Mark back for part 2.
Yes, we will definitely have to do that. I love it. There's so many great things here. And we just did our first Mimi and Pop Pop camp. And one of the very first things that we showed them is the $100 a month. We made them go down the chart and figure out how much money would at 4% interest. And my oldest granddaughter said, "Oh my gosh, I could buy a house with that." So it's really cool. And you're right. It's magical. And now's the time to even if it's just a little bit, even if you can't do $100, even if you just started the habit of $10, but there's so many great nuggets in here. So Mark, you've got so much wisdom. I know people want to know more and learn more. Where can people find you and where can people follow you at?
Well, it's a great question. We have a Facebook page. It's a closed Facebook wealth building page. It was called King's Wealth Building. We're looking at a couple new titles. One is Welcome to the Cause. And short story on that, Linda, is that, again, Tony, my board of director, good friend and confidant, challenged me one year, many years ago. And he said, I need you to focus on something other than real estate. Because he could tell I was burning out a little bit. I wasn't as happy as I was. And He said, you need to challenge yourself to think about something other than real estate. And I said, okay, I got this. I'm going to make it my hobby to go help 10 people get passive. At the time, $4,000 a month was the average household income. And I said, I'm going to get 10 families to $4,000 a month of passive income. I know how to do that now. I'm going to help them do that, and it'll change the world. And I went back to Tony with that, knowing that he would always make me cross it out and double it. And so I'd have to go to 20, and I could still do 20. But he basically said, he really changed the way I thought in the moment. He said, what would it take for you to do 100? Well, I can't consult with 100 people a week. I can't really pour into 100 people. So it changed the way that I looked at everything. Again, Dana, that changed my mindset about everything. Yeah. I'm happy to tell you that Rebecca is number 144 since we started this process. And the way we did that, we did it physically for a long 16 years. Is how long it's taken. And now we do it in a Facebook group every Friday morning live at 7:30 Central. Go on Facebook and just say that you are a fan of this podcast. We'll let you in. That's one huge way. Another way is I now get to interview people and lead wealth building for all of Keller Williams. So you don't have to be with Keller Williams. We'll gladly share those videos out. I think there's 12 videos in the can now and this is straight out of Gary Keller's wealth building, which has been a huge, again, I raised my hand as quick as I could to get this opportunity because I wanted to learn how Gary thought about money. So that's how you could find me. I'm on Facebook as well. Marc King, Marc with a C. Yeah. Anything else, Rebecca? What did I forget?
The lives are awesome, by the way. I catch them as often as I can in the group. I think the group is very valuable. We'll link it also in our show notes for everybody to go and join the group. I would highly recommend it. Lots of great information in there. And also, Mark, the guy that Gary just brought on, he was so good.
Morgan Housel?
Yeah, man.
Oh my gosh. If you get a chance, buy that book.
Yeah, he was awesome. I got the book, but I ordered the book, but I haven't received it yet. But I'm anxious to read that because I'm blanking on the name right now.
So I went ahead, and it's The Psychology of Money. I went ahead and I bought it because I like to listen to all my books.
Audio that speaks.
It's on Audible. So it's The Psychology of Money. And I will tell you, this is fantastic. If you want to learn why people don't build wealth, let me give you a great stat. The average American makes enough money in their lifetime to be wealthy, and only 3% are. 3% of us are what we would call net worth millionaires. And what happens is every one of us earns enough money over our lifetime to be wealthy. It's 100% behavior. If you want to learn about that behavior and why people don't build wealth, read this book or listen to this book, Psychology of Money, Morgan Housel.
Hey, you guys have to, I want to end on this. I think I mentioned this to you, Linda. You guys have to watch that Hillbilly Elegy. Have you watched that or read it?
I have not.
Mark, you would like it.
Is that Amy Adams? Is that the actress?
No, I don't know. Somebody told me about it when we were at John Maxwell. The book told me about the book. It's about it. Well, you'll have to just watch. But anyway, I didn't know it was on Netflix, and so I watched it over Thanksgiving weekend. It's just about growing up like very, very poor, and then dealing with his family members, and then he goes on and graduates from Yale and is a very successful. But it's a cool story. That's awesome. Rebecca, you will really like it. Me and Rebecca like all the same books, so I know that she'll like it.
That is a true story, but I like that you think hillbillies, Rebecca. I am from Louisiana.
No, it's not because of that. I mean, you'll like the story. You can't get any more hillbilly than where I'm from in Tennessee. So
well, I don't know. I lived in a trailer in Rogers, Arkansas with my grandparents. There were 6 of us living in the little trailer. So
well, that's pretty hillbilly. Linda has hillbilly stories too. We all do.
Yes, we do. Absolutely.
All right.
I love it. Well, we could go on forever. So, Mark, we will have to get your promise that we'll do Marc King version 2.
Oh, I love it.
And we'd love to dig in. And we'd love to dig in more to Rebecca because we know she's a wealth of knowledge. So maybe we'll just do Rebecca by herself.
You should. She is way more talented than I am. And I just love you guys. And I thank you so much for everything you're doing. You're spreading so much knowledge and education and joy and love and all those good things. And just happy holidays to all of you. And thank you for having me.
Well, Mark, thank you. Dana and I have a passion for helping realtors have super big lives and create freedoms in their life and margin for all the things that's important to them. So remember, if you have a topic or a question that you'd like for Dana and I to answer on the podcast, please reach out to us at info@everything life and real estate. Or if you happen to have a guest like wonderful guests like Marc King that you'd like to suggest, just make that submission to us at info@everything life and real estate. And Marc, I want to say thank you. I've made some great notes here from just one-liners you've said. I love it. Appreciate every bit of it. And Dana, I will see you next week.
Yeah, see you this week. See you on Friday.
I'll see you Friday. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, Marc, so much. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you, Marc. Thanks, Rebecca.
Be sure to subscribe for more business strategies and tactics to inspire you to live an abundant real estate life. Don't forget to rate and review so we can bring you the best content. Find this and other valuable information at everythinglifeandrealestate.com.